When you're silent for that long of a time period, do you ever want to scream?
I haven't needed to scream. No. And my name is Ty. I spent about 7 years at LinkedIn most recently, then left about 6-7 months ago to travel the world with my partner. The reason that I got into mindfulness and the spiritual practices was after going to high school and kind of following this treadmill of success, I moved to Uruguay for a year, and I started to see kind of these thought patterns that I had built up around success as self-worth was making me unhappy.
One of my old bosses used to talk about sincerity. He used to say, if it were sincere, it would already be done. Honestly, in this entire conversation, I feel way more at peace.
Wonderful.
After having spoken to you, Ty. Welcome to Cherie's Corner, a podcast where we dive into the topic of careers and hear from my friends and guests who are killing it in the business world so we can learn from their lessons, their wisdoms, and their mistakes. I'm your host, Cherie. I recently graduated from Stanford's business school program, and I previously worked in tech and venture capital. In this episode, I am so excited that we get to learn from my friend and guest, Ty Bendit. My friend Ty has so many different internships and life experiences under his belt. I'm so inspired by his curiosity and courage to continuously learn. He's worked in private equity, venture capital, data science, business operations, and product management, and he's excelled in all of those roles. I'm basically trying to say that he's good at everything. And on top of his career successes, you can tell that Ty is just such a mindful person. You can see from the conversation that Ty approaches friendship, relationships, career, and life with a type of gentleness that I think we can all learn from. He's my brilliant friend that I've had the pleasure of knowing for the last 7 years, and I'm so excited that we get to talk to him. Let's dive in. Hi, Ty.
Hi, Cherie.
Thanks so much for being on Cherie's Corner podcast.
I'm really happy to be here on the podcast.
So excited you're here, especially because you are one of my very old friends. Not that you are very old, but we are old friends.
It's true. We're lucky.
And we have a lot to talk about.
We do.
That spans the entire spectrum of life, career, professional, personal, and I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah, there's a lot of things.
And so I give my guests the opportunity to ask me anything they'd like, hardball, softball, ask away.
Well, I'm curious as we're starting here, who's going to be listening to this? Who's your audience? What do they care about? What are you all looking to learn? How can I help you today?
Yeah, so my audience is mainly ages 18 to 35 years old.
Okay.
So people who are early/mid in their career, who are really looking for career advice.
Yeah. And
any insights that we may have that might help them in their career. And I think a lot of the things that we see online, like on LinkedIn, especially when you're looking through resumes or profiles, is that everything looks so polished.
Right.
So my goal for the podcast is yes, I invite my incredibly accomplished friends, peers, classmates onto my podcast, but we also toe the line between yes, we are professionals, but how do we bring the more personal stories into the narrative so that it's not so polished?
Yeah, I like that. So it's a little more depth behind the polish that you'll see on LinkedIn or someone's Instagram. Yeah.
Well, I like to say it in the more corny way. It's humanizing professional business leaders.
Right.
But it really is. It's just we are where we are in our careers because of so many factors that other people don't get to see. Yeah. And it's the ups and the downs that make us who we are. But very often we only talk about the highlights, only because I think that's what people think they want to see.
It's true. And for good reason, because that's what we use to pitch and sell ourselves.
Totally.
So I had to understand both. I like that. Thank you for doing this on your podcast.
Well, I'm excited you're here.
Yeah, it's important.
There any other questions that you'd like to ask, or we can jump right in?
Well, something I was reflecting on is that when it comes to career, at least when I was growing up, there was a way to do it, which I saw looking at my family, looking at society, looking at people around me. And I know this is the case for many other people. that there's a way to do it, right? At some point it was a lawyer or a doctor, and then at some point it's you go into banking, and for many people it's now technology is the big thing, and product management is really hot. So there's been a way to do it, and in some ways we've done it. Mm-hmm. And in other ways, as we've been doing it, we've had experiences that change the way that we see reality, certainly in my experience. So I'm curious, is there anything in your experience, either recently or not, that has kind of changed the way that you see reality?
Yeah, I love this question. This is so Thai.
You don't have to answer now either. It might come up as we're talking.
No, I have. I mean, when you were just asking that question, I did think of something. It's like on top of all of those different traditional aspects of our careers that we've accomplished. On top of that, like, I just graduated from business school, which is also like this very big accomplishment in my life. But I think on the outside, it's like, oh my God, it's this amazing business school program. And now having gone through that and also seen that entire experience on the other side, I've realized that no one knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
As like a larger, more like philosophical concept. And that everyone puts on their pants in the morning in the same way. And what I mean by that is that I have these amazing like business leaders come into my class. Yeah. And so the founder of TPG, one of like the largest private equity firms, right, and most successful ones, came into my class to speak. Yeah. We have world leaders, like policymakers, come and express themselves and teach our classes. Right. And they're just normal humans. And right. I think from the outside, kind of like we were just talking in the previous question, it's really easy to put people on a pedestal and glorify them because we only see the glossy outside. But right. just getting to know them in the classroom as people, because they're able to open up in that way, and we're very lucky to see that. I'm just like, we're all humans. We're all trying to figure it out. Yeah. And it's really broken and like shattered my perception of like making it. Yeah. It makes everyone feel more normal.
I love that.
And accessible, if that makes sense. Yeah. What do you think?
Well, I like the expression you use, that everyone puts on their pants in the morning, because whatever our role is, or our kind of, the story we tell about what we're doing, the actual actions that we're taking are very, very simple every day, as you're saying. Like, we're putting on our pants, we're taking a shower, we're speaking, we're, picking up a laptop, we're typing things. And so while the story about what we're doing might differ person to person, the actual experience of it, or actions at the very basic level, are quite the same. And so that's something I've been interested in, is what's my experience, not of the story, but of the actual actions that make up that story.
I love that. And I'm excited to dive into that a little bit deeper, because this question is touching upon the idea of mindfulness, meditation, being much more aware of the present and the situation that we're in. And I see that as a very Thai thing, a uniquely Thai thing, that I'm excited to dive into.
Absolutely.
Cool. Please introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit more about yourself, how you grew up, and how that's impacted how you see the world.
Absolutely. Big questions. So, my name is Ty. Cherie and I have known each other for maybe 7, 8 years now, since we both started at LinkedIn together. I spent about 7 years at LinkedIn most recently in a variety of roles, and then left about 6, 7 months ago to travel the world with my partner, which has been an amazing experience. Other things that have really drawn my interest in the past decade are spirituality and mindfulness. I've spent a lot of time going on meditation retreats, reading different books from spiritual traditions, especially the Buddhist traditions, and seeing how these impact my day-to-day life, and certainly my professional life as well. And then in terms of other things that are important to me, I grew up in New York City. I have an amazing big family. My parents are both around the New York City area. I grew up Jewish, more culturally Jewish and also religiously, as it's classically defined, but not so much spiritually. So that's why the spiritual seeking has been so much part of my quest as well. And it does feel like at this point it's all coming together, that there seems to be an overlap between the personal, the professional, and the spiritual. So I'm excited to talk about all of those.
I'd love to hear more. I have so many questions for you, but I'd love to hear more about that last part, about the coming together of all those different aspects of your life. I don't think I've heard you quite say that before.
Yeah. And I think it's been a process for me over the years that at some points in my life they were separate because I wasn't yet ready to integrate them. So, I did the work thing, and then I did my personal life, and then I was like curious about this meditation and religious and spiritual thing on the side, but I wasn't yet ready to incorporate that into the day-to-day because it felt distinct, it felt disparate. And now that I'm studying in a deeper way the traditions and I've practiced for a decade, I can actually be more present in my professional and personal life. I can take some of the spiritual practices and ideas and apply them and see the results.
Oh,
so
interesting.
it is kind of cool to see that coming together.
Yes, and I feel like we're in an amazing environment now, like culturally, because people are trying to bridge the gap between their personal and professional self, especially with like coming out of COVID, people feeling super disengaged, unexcited about what they're working on. How do we bring who we are outside of work into work and feel more like a holistic person?
Absolutely.
It's interesting. So, Ty, you are one of the most mindful, present people that I know. And also at work, you are a force of nature. You're incredibly ambitious and driven, and you get results. It's extremely hardworking. And I'd love to understand a little bit more about how you balance these two sides to you, because you're super accomplished in the professional realm, and from what it looks like, you seem to put a lot of time into being very grounded and like present. And from the outside, those two things could be at odds, but you feel very grounded as a person. How do those two come together?
So it started from a place of imbalance. The reason that I got into mindfulness and the spiritual practices was when I was 19, after going to high school and kind of following this treadmill of success, I moved to Uruguay for a year, and I was very lost there. And I started to see kind of these thought patterns that I had built up around success as self-worth. And we know this is a societal trope right now, but I saw it very clearly when I was there, and I saw how the thinking mind was kind of pulling me in very often, and it was making me unhappy. So this kind of professional drive and focus had almost become out of balance with like maybe natural rhythms. So that was the inspiration to become or to study more about mindfulness. Like, it was also coming into pop culture at that time. What does it mean actually, like, to just be here, like to not worry about the story or what am I getting out of this, like just here. So that's how the journey started, from a place of imbalance. And you ask about balance, and so then the two things were kind of still separate, where I had this practice for many years, of coming back to the present moment and meditating and going on retreat. And then recently, as I mentioned before, like really bringing them into balance. So is there a way to do both? Like to be mindful and centered and also be in the real world, like be a friend, be a working person. And I think there is. Yeah.
I've been trying to get into meditation, but it's something that for me feels quite imbalanced. Like, I would like for it to be more centered in my life, which is where the question comes from. It's like when I'm in like the go mindset, I feel quite frenetic, and then I'm like, okay, let me meditate and then get out of this. But then it kind of goes up and down in that way, and whereas I'd like to be more balanced all around.
Yeah, almost like the idea, like when you're feeling really stressed out, then you'll meditate.
Right.
Because then you need it. At that time, but then it'll almost feel like this energetic shift where like all this stuff's happening and I need to calm down. And then it happens again. Yeah. I feel like that's probably a common experience where we tend to, in our society, kind of try and solve the problem. So we'll use meditation as a way to calm down and relax, which is a good thing. Now we're also learning, though, that kind of this preventative ongoing care where we take care of our mind kind of every day is really what will, bring kind of more lasting ease and peace. So if I'm hearing the question correctly, it's like, how do I incorporate that more into my day-to-day?
Yeah.
So interestingly, the way that it worked for me was using my kind of worldly strengths and my worldly drive to find that place of stillness. So specifically, I was this very go-getter kid and liked to get good grades in school. So I ended up, I was the same as you. I wanted to meditate more. I was like, I'm stressed out. Like I need to meditate. So I signed up for a class when I was a freshman where it was in the medical school in my university, and I could take it as an elective. And the homework every day was a mindfulness class for medical professionals. And the homework was to meditate. So the way I developed a routine was kind of using this discipline and meditating every day as homework, really as, assigning myself to do that. And then after some time, it becomes more natural and fun.
It's funny that started as a class activity, but then it was gradually incorporated into your every single day. I love that.
It is weird.
Yeah.
That I was kind of so doing things so quickly that the only way to slow down was like really intentionally doing that by incorporating it into my quick doing of things.
Yeah.
So if I could check the box of meditating and make that another thing, it actually in a way used this strength to help me slow down and become more grounded.
Honestly, anything to get us started into that.
Yeah, that's what people say. It's like,
Yeah.
how much every day should I meditate? And like the wise teachers will say, it's like whatever you'll actually do.
Yes. Yes. I love that.
Yeah.
And so you've been on quite a few meditation retreats, some for a weekend, some for a week, and then also most recently for a month long. It's a silent meditation retreat. Could you tell me a little bit more about how you got into it and what the heck happens when you're silent for 1 month?
Many things happen. This is kind of the paradox of it, is that nothing happens when you're doing nothing and silent for a month, and yet the mind goes everywhere.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating. But I'll start at the beginning of your question, which was, why am I doing this, or how did I get into it?
Yeah.
So they're quite popular now in like the meditation world and the spiritual community. The actual tradition of going on retreat dates back to forever in spiritual traditions. It's been part of, I know in the Buddhist practices, and it's been a part of monastic life, and also a part of deep practice where people will go into seclusion and isolation and just be with the self. And the intention is that we're focused on using that time for spiritual growth, and there's no opportunity for distraction. So in these retreats that I've gone on, I put away my phone, I put away all books and reading materials and any connection to the outside world for the purpose of contacting the present moment again and again and again. It's quite challenging.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Especially in the beginning, to
Yeah.
do that, because our habitual patterns are to avoid when difficult things come up. And in these retreats, I see all the ways that I tend to avoid, and over time, they do change.
That's really powerful that you're able to reflect and understand that bit about yourself. You're like, what is it about me in the day-to-day that avoids? And then where can I unlock and really dig in and reflect some more without talking to anyone and being away from my phone and social media, for me to really dive in deeper into this part of myself. That's really honorable and admirable.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also terrifying.
Over time, I'm much more confident in my mind as a kind and gentle place. In the beginning, it's terrifying.
Yeah. We left off on talking about your silent meditation retreats.
Yes.
And one of the ones that you went on, I guess, was it most recently, or I remember it was the one that I think you and I had talked about or left off talking about.
Yeah.
That it was a month long.
Yes.
What happens in those retreats? Like day to day, and then also like chemically and physically?
So for context, where I do the retreats is a center called Spirit Rock, which is a very famous meditation center in Northern California. And they offer structured retreats. So it's a group retreat. There's about maybe 90 of us there at the center. And we sit and meditate together. We do periods of walking meditation together. And there's a set of teachers that give instructions. Other than that, it's silent. So I'm very much, with my own thoughts and in my own world.
Well, so the teachers speak.
The teachers do speak, yeah, and the teachers there are amazing. They're mostly Westerners who have been practicing for many years and have also studied in Asia and know the tradition really well. And they're a huge support because they do speak, and they've gone through these retreats many times. So they know the things that come up and how to respond to them. And the interesting thing is that while each day on the outside looks the same, so we're sitting, we're walking, we're sitting, we're walking, we're eating, we're sleeping, the experience of it can be drastically different day to day.
Like what you were thinking about every single day and how it progresses.
Exactly. Or even just the affect of the moment. So, and it can change not only day to day, but moment to moment. That one moment, I'm caught in anger and annoyance and fear. And then in another, hour, I'm like blissed out in the trees. But really nothing has changed except my own mind or relationship to what's going on.
When you're silent for that long of a time period, for like 30 days, do you ever want to scream?
I haven't needed to scream. No.
I ask because I'm like, I think I would want to scream. Well, you and I have talked about like how in like a two-person relationship, how much does one speak?
Right.
In a relationship, and we've talked about that dynamic,
yeah.
and I've been ruled that I speak more than enough for one person.
Right.
Perhaps enough for two people.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, I feel like I would have to scream. Don't you feel like you have to scream?
Yeah. Interestingly, I like your reference to this, the rule of two or whatever we called it.
Yeah. Did you make that up?
No, I can't remember where it came from.
Yeah.
Maybe my dad, because he comes up with funny things like this. For our listeners, this is the idea that, in a relationship, if you have two people, then you have a number from 0 to 2, which is the amount of the relationship you carry. So if
in
both partners, in terms of speaking, so if both partners are 1, you both carry about one person's weight. But sometimes you're in a relationship with a 1.8, that talks for 1.8 of the people in the relationship. And if you have 2 of those people, it doesn't work.
Because it has to add up to 2.
Around 2. If you have a 0.2 and a 1.8, then they can have a normal 2-person conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but if you have a 0.2 and a 0.2, it will sound like this.
Cricket. Wait, so and you and one other friend of ours, Ian, decided that I am a 1 point...
what would you say? I'm worried to say this on air. What did we decide?
I don't know.
You can carry a conversation. I mean, this is your work. Like, if I was a 0.2, you could still carry this podcast.
Yeah.
So you're flexible.
I'm a flexitarian.
Yeah.
Like I can be more 0.5.
Right.
But I think I could flex to like 1.9.
Yeah, and you need to be able to, right?
But where do I end up more
moving.
naturally? I think I'm more like a 1.2.
I think so.
More naturally.
Right.
Depends on who I'm with. If I'm with you, I don't stop
too.
talking.
I know, right? It's a range. It's it's an art.
Yes.
And a science.
You were afraid to say my number. Where were you going to place me?
That sounds about right. 1.2.
Okay. I think Ian was less forgiving. I think he's like, you're a 1.9 or something.
Could be.
Could be.
So you got to find your 0.1.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I'd be happy with a 0.1.
Okay.
I think I as a 1.2, I think I would find another 1.2. I'm going to debunk your father's theory.
Good luck.
Thank you. Anyways, okay, so you have not felt the need to scream.
Well, I think the challenging part of the retreat is not so much the not talking aspect, but the requirement to face the present moment without distraction. So while talking is a distraction that we use in everyday life, engaging and interacting socially, there's more common distractions, like technology is a very common one, engaging in busyness, so working, reading, writing, doing things is a common one. Of course, we have other vices, right? We use alcohol, we use video games, we use different substances, eating. So that the challenging part of the retreat is that when things come up, instead of turning to the distractions, we turn toward the thing and experience it.
That's a certain level of masochism.
Well, there's a fine line to which we bring kindness and gentleness to it. So it's not a like turn towards it, like face the goddamn thing, feel the pain. It's a gentler like, oh, like this is interesting. Like, can I just be with this for one breath? Like, what does it actually feel like to feel antsy? Like, where do I feel that? And that's why it's an art over time that there's a concept of right effort. So it's neither pushing the thing away and avoiding it, nor is it, do the thing, fix the problem. It's a middle way of like gently turning toward it for as long as we're able to explore the feeling and the sensation and see what's happening.
Sounds like a lot of curiosity. Less masochism and more
it's a curiosity
and desire to know oneself, and also like why we are the way we are.
Absolutely. Yeah, like what's really going on here as a question. And then the answers can be very surprising. That it's not what I thought it was. I had all this story about I'm angry or I'm upset for this reason, or this is causing me harm, and then if I look at it, sometimes it's just a sensation or something else entirely.
It's kind of beautiful.
It is. That's why I love the practice so much, is that it's changed the way that I see things and showed me maybe how much I think I know that. I don't know.
I love that, Ty. I really, really love that. And I love that it's this part of you that you are and have slowly been integrating into not only your day-to-day, but as we were speaking about before, into your professional life as well, so that you can see yourself as the whole person. So that like these retreats and the things that you've taken away from these retreats aren't left there. They're pulled into your thinking every day and as you go about your day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point of the practice. Not so much that, we go off and sit in a cave for our entire lives, but that, in the time that I'm away and I'm like watching the experience, things are being digested and integrated, that then when I'm in the world, I'm able to act more fluidly with an understanding of all those learnings.
And I also feel like our last role at LinkedIn, where we had met, was very open to this type of openness, to new ideas and to this type of mindfulness and practice. Whereas I feel like other more traditional industries, say finance or consulting, are a bit more rigid. But LinkedIn really encouraged us to bring our full selves.
Yeah, it's an amazing place.
It really is.
It's true.
Pivoting more to the career conversation, Ty, you've worked in so many industries. You've spent time in private equity, in venture capital, and within technology, you've been in business operations, you've been in data science, and also product management. It's absolutely incredible to see all these different chapters of your professional career in one person.
Thank you.
And see you excel from the outside, looks like with so much ease through all these amazing roles and roles with impact that you've had. Of these roles, which has been your favorite, and what are some lessons that you've gleaned from each one of these that you think people would benefit from hearing from?
Yeah. Interestingly, I think each one of those roles was what I needed at the time in terms of learning and growth. And a favorite one, I do certainly have a fondness for my last role in product management at LinkedIn, because it was very creative and it was focused on the result more than the process, in a sense, or that it was about creating a vision and bringing a team together toward that, and in whatever way we could make that happen. So yeah, I loved working in product management for that reason.
And in the other roles that you ended up trying out, for example, in private equity or venture capital, what was it that you learned from those roles that you would take away? And maybe is there something that you learned about yourself in that role where you're like, maybe I won't pursue this path and I'll try a new one, because there were so many other roles that you pursued afterwards?
I think the most valuable thing that I learned in venture capital and private equity, especially during my time sourcing, which is trying to find companies to invest in, was how to pick up the phone and speak with anyone about what they're doing. When I did my first call, I was an intern in college, and I was calling CEOs of companies to see if they'd be interested, in investment. And I was very scared because for a millennial to pick up the phone at all, first of all, that's a challenge. But then to call a CEO, is scary, and to have a conversation was even scarier. And then I did this every day for a while, and it became very comfortable just to become curious about someone else and what are they doing, and be able to talk to them was a really wonderful learning. Mm-hmm. That comfort comes with practice, and and people are fascinating.
Yeah. Getting a lot of those reps in.
Yeah.
Talking to CEOs that on the outside seem very scary, but then you learn over time, everyone puts on their pants the same way, and it gives you that confidence to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. There's always some connection and shared understanding. And it's interesting just to be in an industry which is looking for new and emerging things. Mm-hmm. Whether that's new technologies or new foods that might appeal to a market. What do people want in the new world? Mm-hmm. It's a fun thing.
And that's why being in also, I think, investing in new technologies, creating new technologies is something that we are drawn to, or that we've worked in over the last few years.
Yeah.
And so most recently, when we were at LinkedIn, you were a product manager, but before then you worked in data science.
I did.
For the people who have not yet been exposed to data science, could you give a brief description of what a data scientist is, and why is that role important and perhaps underrated?
So in my work as a data scientist at LinkedIn, I was using data to help drive wise decisions. The term data science is pretty broad, and at another end of the spectrum can also be used to describe people who are building computer models that output decisions in and of themselves. So, for example, an AI scientist or researcher may also fall under the umbrella of data scientist. Mm-hmm. So it's a pretty broad term. But I first encountered it, I think I was in high school, and it was being used to describe kind of the new sexiest profession. I think it was a New York Times article or something, and it was talking about how it was being used at Target, I believe, to help that business market to people who would want to buy certain products. And so the example used was a new mom. Have you seen this article? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the company was actually able to identify people who were pregnant based on their purchasing habits and send them recommendations for things they might need as a new mom before sometimes their families knew, or things like that. Which was part of kind of the why the article was so interesting and appealing.
The sensational, right? It was very sensational. They're oh my God, as a new mom, I hadn't revealed to people that I was pregnant, but now Target is sending me these targeted ads of a baby crib or accessories that a new mom would need.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this was in the news, and it was oh, that's interesting. How do they know that? How can you come from a set of numbers or history and determine that, oh, this is a person that might be having a kid, and as a result might be at a pivotal change in their buyer's journey that they need to, find a new outlet for things they need to buy. Anyway, so that's how I heard the term data science, and it got me curious about that. Mm-hmm. And I did end up working in data science at LinkedIn and using LinkedIn's vast amount of data. In this case, it was in the jobs data, so people looking for jobs and people posting jobs, to try and figure out who's the right match, for example, between a job post and a job applicant.
I don't think people realize, since you and I work so closely with the data at LinkedIn, we know that there's so much information that this company uses in order to inform decisions. But LinkedIn has all this information about what skills are companies looking for, and in the next year, how many roles will likely be available for these jobs in these industries. And so using all that information, and a data scientist has to look at all this information and think if I were going to create a model, or if I were
Yeah.
going to extract information, like what are the key points that I need to consider, and how would I build a model or code something so that I could generate an output, and then, you know, let my business partners know that this is the new finding for us and the new direction that we should go in.
Yeah, it's both of those. It's both the analytics portion and the storytelling portion to help change the business based on what the data is showing. Yeah, it's a fascinating role. So for your audience, I highly recommend, if this is something that's interesting to you, to pursue it, because it's hot and it's fun.
What was it about data science that you enjoyed? And what was it about data science that you pivoted away from and into product management?
I really enjoyed the storytelling component of taking, a vast amount of data around, in this case, the jobs that people were applying to, the jobs that companies were hiring for, the amount that they'd pay to post these jobs, and turn it into real stories around people looking for opportunities and the changes that we can make to help them find them. So I like that part of turning numbers into stories for an audience and making beautiful visuals and telling those stories. I think what the product management experience added to that was actually being on the other side of the table, taking in recommendations about here's what the data is saying, here's what our customers are saying, and then building a vision or a roadmap based on all of that and bringing it to life.
You're very good at storytelling.
Thank you.
It's one of your strengths. And I know when you were a data scientist, I know that you used to run these storytelling events.
I did, yeah.
At LinkedIn, so that you could help other data scientists tell their story through their numbers.
Yeah, it was one of the things I enjoyed most, was because
it was coaching.
Yeah, I was doing coaching and how to storytell with data, essentially.
So Ty, I'd love to know, what are some Ty-isms, some life mantras that you hold to be true, that you think back to quite often?
So one of my life mantras that I've learned through the meditation practice is what's called just this. And so it's the idea that I only need to respond to what's happening in this moment right now. So just this. Yeah, it's kind of like, it's a sigh of relief when I can try and do everything at once. It's just this. Like I'm just here now talking to you, and that's all I need to do right now. Just this.
Just this.
Just this.
It's very freeing.
Yeah, in a way, it's also freeing.
It's like giving myself permission to not worry about all the, dozens of things going on, my checklist, my need to do's, but just being in the present, which is part of it, but also like giving myself permission to be in the present.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it's both focused and freeing.
Just this.
Do you have any that you use?
There are some that I borrowed from a professor of mine, Joel Peterson.
Okay.
He has 4 mantras that he constantly says to himself.
Right.
And these are things that he's built along the way to combat some of his more natural tendencies and natural thinking. And so he calls it like rewiring his own operating system.
Okay.
And one of the things he says is, it's not about me.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I like that one. Like,
Yeah.
I'm at a coffee shop and a barista is a little bit rude. I'm just like, oh no, did I say something wrong? What did I do?
Right.
All these panic thoughts.
It's not about me.
It's not about me.
Yeah.
Maybe this person had a bad day, or
Right.
It's not about me. So
Yeah.
I really like that one. I'm not my emotions.
Yeah.
It's also related to that too. Like, emotions come and go. You can watch them, but they don't define who I am.
Right.
I have everything that I need. That one's powerful.
Yeah. It's actually very similar to some of the Buddhist psychology.
Yeah.
And some of the phrases that are used there. Yeah. So one of them is, it's not personal, very similar, Another one is, it's not self, as you said, like my emotions are not me. So whatever's happening in this moment, it just is. It's not me or mine. It's just, it is.
It just is.
Yeah.
Just this.
Right, just this, exactly. So I love to see how like the ancient traditions and some of the modern psychology overlap.
That's true. Yeah, and the last one is I'm grateful.
Yeah.
That one's very simple and to the point. And these 4 mantras that my professor has shared in class are things that I take with me. And at one point, I was journaling them every single day, writing them down, either in the morning or the evening to help center myself.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah. And if you look at some of my journals, I would have no other entries other than day after day writing these 4 mantras.
Yeah. And what would you, as you're writing them, would you bring anything to mind, or was it the act of writing? What was the thing for you?
It was both. I think the act of writing it out made it that much more powerful.
Yeah.
Like I could very much concentrate on each one that I was writing out.
Right.
And then also just like, I think during that time, in that like 20-day period last year, I was going through a breakup and felt very unstable.
Yeah.
Or just like very, I felt unaligned. And writing these statements down, these mantras, helped align me and like who I really am and what I really think. I really do believe these things, but in the heat of the, spiral of these like feelings or these emotions, these are very grounding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like those terms, alignment and grounding. In a way, it's also very similar to this new age spirituality, which is becoming very popular, which talks about the same concepts in similar terms about, you might have heard of the law of attraction, for instance. Have you heard of this? It's very popular now. It's this idea that kind of we attract what we put out. And so you made a post also about like attracting love into your life rather than chasing after it.
Oh yes, I don't chase, I attract.
Right, I don't chase, I attract. That's the law of attraction, right? This idea that we put things out there and then we get them back.
Yes.
And the science through which that happens in the tradition as it's described is through a vibrational energy. So we put out a vibrational energy and then we attract something of a similar vibration.
I do believe that.
Yeah, and that's alignment is a word used to describe that, right? Or aligning with something that feels right.
What is for me will find me.
Yeah.
I really believe that. And what misses me is there's another way to put it, but like I like what is not for me will not find me, or like
right. You won't attract things that are out of alignment with who you are.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I'm starting to get into this actually.
It's cool stuff.
A lot more. Like I don't know, the vibrations, like I don't know what the science is behind that, but I do know that like in repeating these mantras, it makes me feel better in myself.
And that's all that matters, right?
And that is all that matters. And I can N of one, but I'm like, if this is working for me, I might as well keep going and feeling more centered.
And I think that's a key point is you say like, it makes me feel better.
Yeah.
Because it shows that the feeling is not necessarily in the action, but it's just as important. So to be more clear is you could write these mantras, and if you're not feeling it, or maybe you're feeling the opposite, you write, I am grateful, but you're feeling really pissed off, then it won't work. But if you write it and you can actually feel like, oh, there is something I'm grateful today, with all this shit going on, like I got some great watermelon or whatever it is, like, but then there's a feeling along with it. So it works and it's right. And I like that addition to it. It's like, yes, I'm writing these things and I'm feeling the resonance, or I'm feeling the alignment.
That's true.
Yeah.
There's another layer to it as well. It's like you can't really push yourself into feeling it if it's not there. Yeah. You can try, but that's also out of alignment.
Right. Then that would be out of alignment. Yeah. So it's like there's a deeper level in addition to the action. Yeah.
One of my old bosses used to talk about sincerity. Yeah. And he would use the word sincerity and alignment kind of interchangeably. Yeah. And so he used to say, if it were sincere, it would already be done. If it were sincere, it would already be done. Okay. Meaning like if you were really wanting to do something and it were aligned with how you really feel, it would already be done. It wouldn't be something that you were procrastinating or putting off or not wanting to do.
I like that.
I like it a lot. Yeah. And the word sincerity, it's not really used in like the conventional definition but he's just like, if it were sincere, it would already be done. And you can't force sincerity. Like you're pushing and you're grinding and you're trying to get to the next level. His whole point was like, the tighter you hold on to something and you're pushing for it and you're clenching your teeth and there's that grit, like the more it'll be harder to get. And if you just let go and let it happen and put good vibrations out into the world, you're right where you're meant to be. And it'll happen.
Right, it's beautiful. It's the sincerity.
It
tracks in the things that are right.
I think about that quite often.
And then on the flip side, if there's something that we want very badly, but it's not coming into our life, or there's something we don't want that we're pushing away, maybe there's something else going on there that's preventing us from feeling that sincerity. There's one professor, I think it's at Harvard, and I wish I remembered her name now, but she describes it as kind of like a foot on the gas and foot on the brake in a car. And so sometimes there is something that we really want, and so there's an intention behind it, right? But why hasn't it happened already? You know, as your mentor says, well, it could be that there's also a foot on the brake, that there's something else that's like acting contrary or stopping us from moving toward that thing.
Conscious or subconscious.
Right, conscious or subconscious. So I love that, right? If it's sincere, it would already have happened.
Yes.
And if not, like, could there be a foot on the brake?
Oh my gosh.
Interesting, huh?
By golly, we tapped into something. And I think that applies to both professional and personal stuff. I think back to like relationships, so much of like trying to like make a relationship or a friendship work, like romantic or platonic, and you know, and why, like trying so hard and like, why isn't this working? Like, what's off about this? And it, you know, it's different because there's two parties involved. It's not just like inner self reflections, but I really think about it in terms of relationships and friendships as well. Like, I think not everything is easy and you have to work through things, but even as you're working through things, like I feel like there is an alignment there.
Absolutely. Like how much of a friendship is, I really love being with this person, spending time with them, or I should be because we've been friends for a while, or I should be because they were nice to me, or I should be because I'm supposed to have more friends, or whatever it is. Like it's a different feeling. You know, but we do, like we hold on to friends sometimes way longer than we should because we should. And
the word should,
right?
We use should 3 times there. And there's so much like judgment.
It's true.
It's kind of like we were talking before. I don't know if it was on camera or off camera, but there's this like whatever we want to do that is so aligned with ourselves, and then we bring in like society or judgment, and it's like this other thought that kind of, you know, messes things up.
And it's often a mix of both. It's not often just pure one or the other. It's like all this stuff going on, and we find a way with all of it.
Life is complicated, man.
It's complicated. It's true.
So Ty, what is something that you've learned about yourself recently?
I think I've learned that there's like a time and a place for everything, and that I need to allow that in my life when the time is right. So right now I've been traveling the world for 7 months with my partner, and it's been amazing. And like this has been the time for that. It's the perfect time in my life to go and explore an adventure, and I'll sometimes have, you know, thoughts come into my head, whether that's internal or someone asking me, well, you know, like what's next? Whether that's professionally, like what are you going to do with this? Or relationship wise, you know, are you going to propose, or are you going to have kids and things like this? And so I've learned that like there's a time for all those things, but right now it's just this. Like I'm just enjoying my life and traveling the world. And that will end, as all things do. And then there will be a time, you know, for whatever's next professionally. And there will be a time for whatever's next relationship-wise. And that's freeing, almost, to learn about myself that I change.
And with each moment, you're right where you need to be. You're exactly where you need to be.
Yeah, I like that too as a life mantra. I'm right where I need to be. Yeah.
So I won't ask you what's next because I will spare you that question.
Well, it is fun to imagine what's next. It is fun to imagine what's next, as long as I remember that that's only in the context of the imagination in this moment. So if I can just imagine and do that freely, while knowing like it might happen, it might not happen. I like that way of imagining because it's freeing.
Yeah. And it doesn't put too much pressure
Right.
on ourselves.
Yeah.
For what has to be like holding on to something and just,
Right.
with that clenched fist,
Absolutely.
clenched jaw.
It's just like let's imagine.
So let's imagine.
Let's imagine.
Let's imagine you in 10 years, me in 10 years.
Okay.
We'll still be very close friends.
I hope so.
What do you see for yourself? And you can answer this however you'd like, in the professional sense or the personal sense. I just love to hear how you picture that.
I'm hoping that I can't even imagine in some ways what I'll feel like in 10 years from now. That new things will have come into my life that I don't even know what they are. Like professionally, something totally different that certainly, uses my skill set, but maybe it doesn't exist today. Who knows? Certainly I hope we're still friends and connected. I love feeling
we will be.
We have an amazing community, and like I get to come visit you wherever you are. I get to watch your, Netflix series and be like, I knew her when she was still doing podcasts, and whatever it is. I hope to feel purpose in my life, to feel love and connection and wonder that like at that point we'll be like, what's going to happen 10 years from now? We'll be like, I don't know, but it's going to be magical.
And from your response, even though there's so much ambiguity in the next 10 years, I am hearing these like core tenets of who you are, like wonder, purpose, like those are your values. And we don't know exactly where that will take us, sure, in terms of like a roadmap, but like having those very specific pillars in our life, it sounds like those are important to you.
Yeah, like the feeling matters more than the story. I could be at a story level here or there, or, in this job with this title.
Yeah.
As long as if I feel like loving and connected and purposeful, then wonderful. Like that's so much more important to me than the story of what I'm doing or where I am.
And the final question, Ty, is around purpose. I think a lot of young people and a lot of conversations that you've had with friends and mentees have been around purpose. How do you think about purpose, and especially this question that probably plagues a lot of early and mid-career professionals, like what is my purpose? What am I doing here? What are some frameworks that you think through on answering that?
Yeah, that's the big question. What am I supposed to be doing here? So the thing that was most helpful for me was a teaching from a teacher named Eckhart Tolle, who's a very renowned spiritual teacher, and he wrote the book A Power of Now, which is a bestseller around presence and being with the moment fully. So he talks about two types of purpose, an inner purpose and an outer purpose. And this outer purpose is the one that we're more familiar with, which is the story around, what am I doing with my life? What am I doing with my life? It can feel quite big. Am I doing enough? And that, while that is important, he says that the inner purpose is actually much more important. And the inner purpose is just to be right here, doing what we're doing. So it's just for me to be here talking to you. And then if I carry that inner purpose with sincerity in every moment, then it will, over a string of moments, necessarily lead to some outer purpose. And whatever that outer purpose is will be the most fulfilling, because each of those moments was really cared for in a deep way. So I love Eckhart Tolle's approach to inner purpose too.
Is it more quieting the outer purpose until you figure out your inner purpose? Because I feel like the outer purpose can be quite loud, especially, for new grads or, people just getting started in their careers. There's a lot of pressure, external pressure to be like, what am I supposed to do? What is the industry I need to be in? Am I interested in climate change? Is it, technology for, AI? Like, it could be quite loud. So how do you go about navigating that?
Yeah, I like the term loud, because Eckhart Tolle talks about this too, in the sense of the thinking mind. can take over. Like, you probably had this experience where, like, you can't stop thinking. And it's all these thoughts, and I know I'm thinking, but I shouldn't be thinking this, and there's so much.
Spiral.
A spiral, yeah, we talk about a spiral. And that's very common in our world. So he does talk about the idea that part of it is stepping away from that thinking mind a little bit, which comes with practice, of course, and touching back to the feeling, whether that's the feeling of energy in the body, or whether that's some contact with the now, a sound, a sight, and slowly, like, that loud thinking mind, you know, which can be very loud, like, quiets, and then there is more ability to follow the inner purpose. I hope that resonates.
It does. Honestly, in this entire conversation, I feel way more at peace.
Wonderful.
After having spoken to you, Ty.
Thank you. I'm so glad that I feel the same way.
Just this.
Yeah, just this. And also the idea that there's something beyond the words, that while the words are important, there's like a deeper connection or transmission or resonance that's there that you can feel.
Yeah.
And you can feel when it's peaceful, and you can feel when it's loud.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of care we have for each other.
Yeah.
And also shared history.
That's true.
In so many different facets and contexts. Like, we've traveled together, our friend groups, and we've known each other from work, and all these different moments that have been so important and also informative to how I now think about things because we've met.
Yeah, we're really lucky.
Yeah, how lucky are we?
The journey is fun.
And the fact that I haven't seen you for, like 6 months. And even before that, it was a long time because of grad school and us being on different coasts. And it's so nice that we can come together and actually, obviously, talk, but then also talk about this type of stuff. And on my podcast. But
that's amazing.
Talk about this kind of stuff that's like really important to us.
Absolutely. And it continues from here. Who knows what happens with the listeners of this podcast or your next thing that comes out.
I'm so excited.
I'm excited.
Thanks, Ty.
Thank you, Cherie.
Thanks for doing this. Aww. Special.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Cherie's Corner podcast. Before we get into the takeaways, I would so appreciate it if you could like, comment, and subscribe. As you know, I have another podcast called Tiger Sisters Podcast, and when you subscribe, you'll get updates to both of these podcasts. It would also be amazing if you could share this podcast episode with someone who might find it helpful. Alrighty, let's get to the takeaways. The first takeaway is to be gentle with yourself. I love when Ty said, take a moment to notice, or just this. Ty first got into meditation and craving the feeling of balance when he noticed that he was imbalanced to begin with. That takes a certain level of noticing, slowing down, and also having self-awareness. I've personally had a pretty hard time getting into meditation. Sometimes I go in, sometimes I go out, but I really like it when Ty mentioned that meditation is best when you can fit it into your schedule. The second takeaway is that Ty got rejected a lot. When he worked in private equity and venture capital, he would literally call CEOs and talk to them on the phone and get many repetitions in on getting the answer no from them. And that is so important. Life is full of rejections and getting many, many no's. So the more you get used to that feeling, the less scary it becomes. And on a related note, everyone puts on their pants the same way in the morning. Talking to CEOs, executives, and scary people is good practice to put yourself out there because it gets less and less scary the more you do it. The third takeaway is that Ty shows us there's another way. Oftentimes when we think of the person who is very successful in their career, it's the person grinding, the person hustling. But I really love that Ty shows another side to that. Yes, he's conventionally successful in his professional career, but he's also very mindful and thoughtful, and I love that he shows us that the two can coexist. It's okay to slow down, to breathe, because that might be exactly what you need to get you to the next level. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Cherie's Corner. I'll see you next time. Bye!